Effect Get Your Arms Around Unmanaged Change Faster webinar. Today's presenter is Paul Buffington, Senior Consultant at EffectTech. Paul, you may now begin.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks to everyone for joining. I know we've got folks coming from all over the place, so I have to say good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening. So today is a continuation in our webinar series focused on Splunk for IT operations. And as Michelle announced in the title, and you saw that, and I think everyone joining today has some interest around change management and the challenge we have there. So let's go ahead and get started. What I have today is some slides, give you an agenda here real quick, and then we'll get right into the specifics, some slides, and an actual demo of an environment that we're going to put together Splunk Insights and basically stitch that together for change management and configuration management. So today's agenda, we're going to look at the impact of infrastructure changes and how they're frequently the root cause of our critical service problems. We'll also questions we'll go ahead and post as we go along. And I encourage anyone today, is you have questions about, when we're talking about Splunk or change management, or you want to share challenges that you're facing around the data insights that might be your team is lacking, we'd love to interact with you. We will open up the phones at the end of the webinar today to take a Q&A, but first we'll go ahead and go through the slides. So but feel free to go ahead and post those, and Michelle will go ahead and share your questions with us. So we're going to look at how we can analyze change data from a single solution, and that single solution is Splunk for the enterprise. We'll look at how we can actually monitor for those, not only the authorized changes, but unauthorized. And I'm going to share a couple customer examples that I'm working on right now where this relates. And it's that aspect of getting those insights and knowing why your critical systems were impacted, not just the why, that, I'm sorry, not only the why, because oftentimes we have point monitoring solutions that'll tell us, what changed or what the issue is, but it'll never tell us the why, and that's where Splunk comes in as a very good fit with that. And then we'll also show you how you can get started to show improvement in the next quarter as you're looking to tackle this challenge. Now, where I like to start is the 30,000-foot view. I'm going to just kind of consider and back up for a second and think about the top priorities in your IT organization today. It probably falls into one of those areas, whether it's around increasing growth or new business solutions that you have to roll out, or improving your overall customer experience. And it may go across all four of those areas. And oftentimes what we hear is we have a smaller budget to be able to do that, or we need to retire certain tools because they're no longer going to be renewed. So these are all the things that we're facing, and as we kind of peel these initiatives at the bigger level back and look at the infrastructure we're responsible for, it's very complex, not only for the data centers that we have to maintain and manage and deploying new solutions there, but also how we stitch these different offerings together, and now add in virtualization as well as cloud offerings. It adds a lot of complexities to these environments. And so the challenges that we're faced, not only from the silos of technology and understanding what's happening on the different layers and levels within these silos and how they're connected, but often finds with these outdated point solutions are disconnected from what we have to deliver to the business and customers today. And if we were to look at service outages and service problems, oftentimes we can trace it directly back to an IT change that was implemented. Over 80% of our time in these environments is often maintaining and chasing these problems down, and we leave us very little time for actually innovating. And so that's why we want to consider change management today. It requires the ability to detect, audit, report on changes to your IT systems. Now, some people will view this as a specific purpose, and tool requirement. The reality is that change affects all, the three key pillars of IT that we see on this slide today. Now, our focus is IT operations. And at a later time, we'll come back and talk about compliance, especially around SOX compliance or even security. But our focus today is on change management as it relates to IT operations. Now, as we're going through and reading some different reports, and Gartner shows that 84% of all system failures, outages, are a direct result of the people and process, and that oftentimes is the unmanaged change that is implemented or wasn't planned out properly, and then we have to go back and figure out how this is impacting this, or oftentimes the frontline folks don't have the insights directly to that. I was reading a report, it was like 2 weeks ago, of a major airline. Their system outage was a direct cause of a software patch that someone missed in the change, and as it was implemented, it took them several days to trace this back to this change that had caused this major outage. And we know that our lines of business are constantly asking for, I want the latest software. We see these latest, offering available, or we need to change the configuration. So there's a constant churn of change in the organization, as well as the compliance that is required to deliver this. So we just can't stop making those changes. Now, I know organizations, if we were to pull everyone on the call today, you're probably somewhere along your journey through an ITIL framework implementing change management. And hopefully on the first one there, no unauthorized changes, meaning that we're going to ensure that there's zero acceptable of having these unauthorized changes going in. We're at least able to control that. But even sometimes I've seen where someone just makes a slight tweak. They have access to a production system. They think, oh, I'll just make this little change here, and they mistype it, and instead of putting in 400, they put in 4, and now we have a configuration that's the lowest levels of IT that is just waiting to cause an issue. There's also the unplanned outages, or your success rate of your changes. So we often move what's plan A to moving on to plan B because of the way where we're at in our maturity of change management. So what I want to consider as we go through this is an actual example. So, change that isn't successful, or it's unplanned or unauthorized that gets into the environment, the folks on the front line of the service desk are going to be on the receiving end of the customer calling in saying, this business service is down, I cannot access it. And so service desk will do the best they can. They're working with the tools. Maybe they have some dashboards, they have some tools available to them. They're going to look on a console and everything's showing green, everything looks good. And so quite often what they do is they'll reassign the ticket onto the next person in the chain, and they'll escalate it up to the next level of support. So in this case, we're going to move it over to the app support team because we think it's at the app layer. So the Java monitoring tools, they go through and they look at their tools available to them, and they're not seeing anything. So now they have to call the system administrator to pull the log files off production. In that case, now we're involving a third person, maybe on another call. We have to actually go through and escalate that ticket up and pull in the sysadmin. Sysadmin then has to pull the production logs, either make them available to the application support or developer, or start going through and looking at configurations. And so they're crawling around the depths of IT, trying to figure out what caused this issue. And what they're actually asking themselves is, now what changed? This was fine over the last several weeks. They're going back, and they may have change records they can look at, and that'll tell them the authorized changes. But what about those unauthorized changes that came in as a result of other things from other groups? So now we're looking at being able to pull that needle in the haystack out. Changes as we see them today, and you think about your current environment, frequently they're the root cause, as I said, of the service problems and the service outages that you have. You are quite often reliant on those traditional change management solutions to where we have something to document the change, we can plan it out, and we can implement it, but they are tied to very large, cumbersome databases. We've heard the promise of closed-loop change management, and all of the customers in the last 9 years that I've been working with, they look to implement that, but there's no real ability to do it because often they're dependent upon these point solutions to go and look at that. They don't have anything that's horizontal that can reach across the infrastructure to be able to tell them that. So it's oftentimes a manual verification. I was sitting with a customer a couple weeks ago that all of this is done via email. So, they go check this file, it's email it back to me, they put it in the work log. And oftentimes IT operations lacks the visibility. They know what changed, they've documented it, but oftentimes if something comes up later on and this is rolled out to production, why is this occurring in production? And we are able to put that why and that what together. So I want to pose a what if to you, a what if question, that what if tomorrow you could actually take your production application stacks, tier 1 apps, or those applications deployed to your data center and be able to search that like the web. Oftentimes we look for something. I was on working on a program the other day, and I didn't recognize a certain command. I went right to Google, Googled the command, and I had a complete definition. I knew exactly what and why that command was used. What if you could actually search for the activity and data in your IT infrastructure and have full visibility to the changes and the configurations at a single source of truth of your environment, seeing where that change has impacted the production applications in real time? What if you weren't bound by your point solutions that are really good maybe in a certain silo of your data, but you were able to actually stitch all of that data together to give you that real-time insight? And you can gain this in meaningful insights for not only your change management teams, but also your frontline IT staff. So when there is an outage, they can immediately look and correlate the two. And that's where Splunk comes in. Splunk for IT operations is a perfect fit for this case. Splunk is the engine for machine data. Splunk gives us what we call a universal data platform, allowing us to integrate end-to-end capability across all of this data, as we see on the left-hand side here, being able to pull in and analyze that data from a single searchable interface, and be able to do that both in real time, but also historically. It collects all of this data, indexes, any data that we're bringing in is time-stamped and time series based, so it's searchable across a timeline, making it very easy for someone to look back or a certain time slice to find out and understand that. And it's horizontal because I'm pulling sources across the stack here, not only from my application tier, but all the way down to the infrastructure and database tier. We often call this schema on the fly, meaning that as I search here, the questions that I ask of the data today will be very different 30 days from now because the issues that I'm facing are very different. So this is a solution we're going to talk about in the context of change management today. And we'll come back to this in the demo. I'll give you a little more details of how Splunk actually functions, and we'll see it working in real time. But first, I want to actually consider some data. Data oftentimes that the expert is familiar with and understands, and we'll just go ahead and consider an example here. So we see different sources of data, order processing, where the user's interacting on the front line is going to be ordering something or interacting with your key business application, and it moves its way down through the business stack. Now, someone that's the web server expert, they'd look at this file and they'd understand exactly what it is. But other people across the stack may not have the understanding or the context for this data. But inside of this data, inside of your data, is very valuable insights. Insights that tell us who the customer is, or the user that's in the business environment, how they're interacting with it. In this case, what they're actually ordering, and which part of the infrastructure they're actually interacting with. In this case, of the products database. So we can see all the way across here, and in addition to that, we can start to see, well, what kind of issues have they had? In this example here, their connection was refused because of, on the back end, there was an error of writing to the database environment. We also can start to bring in and tell the story of how the user is interacting with it. Are they having a positive experience? How long are the transactions taking? In this case, they're sitting in our call center for over 30 minutes trying to resolve this issue. So we can start to take these data insights across the horizontal technologies, stitch them together, and make them fully searchable from Splunk. Splunk is well positioned to be able to pull this data in. It doesn't require any parsers or any formatting. It simply forwards the data into the Splunk indexer and make it searchable by IT. And we see some examples of the different data, whether it's customer-facing or outside the data center or inside the IT infrastructure. We can start pulling all of this data in. And once we've pulled that data in, it becomes searchable from some primary capabilities from a single data store, single UI. We can make the UI match the audience. Frontline support would have a very different interface, so we can easily deploy for them versus backline supports needs just a simple full-on search capability. So it is able to deploy across multiple use cases. Those use cases include search and investigation. Think about knowing why or what changed and why that changed dramatically faster, not only for the front line, but also for your point application support teams. Also allowing us to look at the data in real time, knowing, okay, someone just changed this configuration. It's not authorized. I will then proactively monitor those key critical configuration files and notify a team or potentially open up an incident because that configuration on that critical system was changed. We also can look historically, predicting our change, what's our success rate. And there are some, I think, limited point solutions out there that allow us to somewhat predict that. But now we can actually look at our data in real time as well as historical and look at what's our track record with this group and be able to predict the probability of successful change. So once we add Splunk to the equation, we actually have the ability to gain real-time insights right from the beginning. So if we have this change that we were talking about a few minutes ago, instead of going and looking at, maybe a limited dashboard, they can look directly at Splunk, which is the data from the infrastructure. The service desk then knows that there are, where the issues are at from the dashboard, and immediately route it to the appropriate team. That means that the database team is going to get assigned this ticket for the issue that we were seeing of that disruption in service and be able to look at their specific dashboard, compare the IT infrastructure data with the configuration and change data, all stitched together in a nice interface and be able to resolve this incident. This means that Splunk is allowing us to reduce our MTTR. On average, customers find it's about 90%, or just to reduce the risk of unmanaged change because we can start to notify around when I find a change ticket that wasn't authorized. I'm actually working with another customer. We were on a call a couple of weeks ago where they're taking their change data out of their ticketing system, bringing it into Splunk so they can now look at their security access account authorizations, and they can match that up saying, okay, I have accounts that were audit modified or reconfigured, and compare, was there an authorized change for this account change? So it applies to not only IT, but also security as this example as I'm sharing. Michelle, any questions to this point so far?
We actually do have one from Jose. You had said earlier that Splunk can help with the what changed and why, but can Splunk tell me the details of who specifically made the unauthorized change and when it occurred?
Good question. Thanks, Jose, for asking the question. Yeah, we can pull in the last modified in that file, who was actually modifying it, so we can start to audit these configurations. We'll see a little bit of that today in the actual example coming up in the demo. So let me get right to the actual demo. I'll allow for more time seeing it in action. So let me slide over to my demo environment. So what we have here is an actual application system representing a production system that's an online store where my customers, both internal and external, are interacting with it. And the technology stack for this, we'll see in a few minutes, is comprised of a database backend, a middle tier that's processing all the transactions, primarily around Tomcat. So we have our JVM metrics of how much memory is being used on a Linux environment. We have Apache running for the web server so the users can interact with the web content and complete their requests. So we're pulling in quite a bit of different data. I want to just show you as this data is coming in real time, this data is flowing into this, from the forwarders out in these appropriate stacks of the layer across the data center, and it's flowing into our central searchable Splunk index. When Splunk brings this in, it makes this time series-based data. Now, before I get to the change management part, I just want to show you, because I know some of you are new to Splunk. You indicated that in the opening here. And I just want to come over and just kind of show you core Splunk capability. So I'm sitting on the search bar of Splunk, allowing me to search within this context of this, what we're looking at for this IT application production system. And I can indicate, well, what time series range do I want to search on? We'll say, well, let's look at 60 minutes. I want to see what's happened in the last 60 minutes. So in the last 60 minutes, we have had a total of, and you'll start to see the timeline fill out, around 13,000 events have come in. And we're getting data from different source types within here. So we're seeing our access logs, our WebSphere logs, as well as our SQL database. So Splunk is horizontal in that way that it's allowing us to bring all of this into one searchable insight. It also tells us what's going on for different products customers are interacting with, to even the ability to look at the statuses. Were they successful? Did they have errors? In fact, I'm seeing this now, errors. Let's say someone had called me up and I'm frontline support. I just want to see in the last 60 minutes, what did I have for errors? And I can just simply put in a search, and Splunk allows me. So it's very powerful, and then I can just put in the word I'm looking for and start looking across all of these log files. I didn't have to call anyone. I didn't have to say, let's start a WebEx. All right, you go over and check this log file while I check this one. And we start, that crawling around in the data center in the middle of the night with our headlamp on, trying to find where's that needle in the haystack. I don't have to do that. I can say, oh, here's the issue right here. We have it. The database is having the issue. The example we showed in the slide, it can't write to the file. I'm going to go ahead and call the DBA right now. I don't have to escalate this ticket through 5 other groups. I can go ahead and go right to the team that maintains this to where we can resolve the issue. Now, from a change management perspective, I'm going to show you how we can take this data and represent it in dashboards where I can monitor. I don't have to go right to search. I can actually have visuals that give me a big picture, and I can quickly decide how I need to deal with this issue. So let's go ahead and go over. And any of this data, by the way, let me go back just before I do this. Any of this data can be turned into a dashboard very fast and easily. So I'm just going to show you, let's say for product name, so these are the products being ordered. I want to say, top values over the last time, by the last 60 minutes. Say what a manager asking for, knowing how different data points are being interacted with in a certain time range. I have the ability to quickly chart. All I did was did a time chart, count by the specific data value. It immediately puts it into this nice visual. I can simply go ahead and create this as a dashboard, add it to an existing dashboard, or create a new one, email the manager saying, okay, go ahead and log in and take a look at the data. Oftentimes I hear from customers is they love it because they become the IT hero. They're able to put these data insights that often have been trapped in the IT infrastructure around what we call machine data, the application infrastructure, the business data. They can take and put that on the operational and business side immediately, and it's very fast time to value with Splunk. Now, with that, that's core Splunk. Let's go ahead and apply it to our change management example. So let's go ahead and go over. I'll start right here from the big picture. So because this is time series based and I can pull out different values of my log files, I can actually follow the transactions in my files. I can know how this system is performing. I can track true SLAs, not only the very specific point SLAs that might be in a certain solution, but I can look across all of this data, across all of the entire technology stack, and I can say, what's our SLA infractions in the last 60 minutes? A bit of a concern there. The support center might have this up in their operations center might have it on the board. They can actually look up and say, we're a little bit over threshold right now. That's a concern in the last 60 minutes. Failed transactions are looking pretty good, and it's a little bit higher. And overall capacity, by the way, capacity is not only the throughput, how long is it taking a transaction to go across the 3 tiers, but also it takes into account what's the memory utilization, the CPU utilization. So we can put all of that into one calculation to come up with a true capacity of the architecture. So we have ability to look at SLA infractions. Are we over or under the average? So here's the SLA, here's the average. We're bouncing over that right now. What's actually causing that? And we can drill down into the actual environment state. So let's just go down one level here. And now we're sitting on something that I may connect this directly to my incident management team, allowing them to see, okay, I know I'm looking and seeing, major changes have been rolled out. There were some updates in this environment, but I can quickly assess right here what's going on the web tier. Okay, so the web tier here, we put some Splunk dashboards, and this is your data in real time. So we're able to pull in those codes that I was seeing a few minutes ago. And I'm seeing some bad requests. These numbers aren't quite at what I want, but overall, the web tier is performing fine. Same with the app tier. Quite often in the past, I've always been suspect of, the JVM heap size being, too large and consuming too much memory. Not today. This one looks fine, but the database tier, That's where the issue is. I can immediately, my eye goes right to there because we're spiking out on the overall metrics that we're measuring around the different queues on the different servers. And we could bring in our different queues. And in this example, we've only posted in, we have all the queues splunked, but we brought in our purchase queue. And we can see the current, the average is here, but the current is well over for the last 60 minutes. It's been stacked up. So I can drill down a little bit further. So Frontline immediately, without doing any searching, looking at your data, has the ability to go ahead and look at what's going on with this queue. Look at the utilization of the memory and the CPU. Looks fine. But here's the power of Splunk. We've stitched together our configuration data, our change data, with the actual real-time data. It tells me what were the last, in this case, 3 changes. I can bring in the last 5 changes, or what's the configuration showing for this database? What was most recently changed on the database? And not only what was most recently changed, who was the user and when did they change it? Right now I see the issue. I don't have to go any further. I'm going to go ahead and drill down to the data. I want to show you this. But I want to just point out that I can quickly go ahead and call the DBA team, and someone gets to go yell at Simon saying, you made a change here that wasn't correct, wasn't properly implemented, or potentially this is a change that I did not, we can mash up in the change data based on the product categorization or the configuration item. I can say, was there an authorized change? In this case, there wasn't. So I need to now go ask Simon, why is he making, this DBA, why is he making unauthorized changes in the environment? So let's go and look at the raw data real quickly. So now we're looking at this, and this is actually what we call a macro. It's a mashup of multiple searches into this, overall concatenated search in Splunk. It's allowing us to go ahead and say, I only want to see those that are unauthorized. So what I've done here now is expand it out, and you're seeing the power of the search Splunk language in itself. Over 150 search commands, very easy to learn and super powerful that we can do statistics, we can do charting, we can compare time ranges. In this case, we're looking at the actual raw data and looking at transactions, evaluating, has this ticket, if we're looking at, is it a yes or a no? In this case, I'm limiting it to a no. And we're looking at change tickets. So whenever this occurs, and we have a configuration change that comes in, and there is no matching change request, what I want to do is go ahead and take and look for this and create an alert on it. So now I can proactively monitor for unauthorized changes in real time of my critical production apps. And if the change comes in because someone pushed it from another server or someone inadvertently made the change and didn't realize what they were touching, I'm going to know about it in real time and prevent this costly outage that the business is now facing with customers calling the service desk saying this service is running slow or this service has gone down. So this simple example is allowing us to showing us how we can actually stitch this valuable information that, I might have a point solution around monitoring these different areas, but it doesn't allow me to put all of this data together. Because Splunk is bringing this data in through forwarders into a central searchable index area, I can now tell the story that my IT teams are missing from an IT operations perspective.
Paul, we have a
so
question.
Michelle, I want to open up for questions, and I'm going to go to my last portion of my demo and show you some other Splunk insights for change management, configuration management before we go on.
Perfect. We do have a question, Paul. This question comes from John. Do these gauges and charts come out of the box, and can we customize them?
Wow, excellent. I'm glad you asked about that, John. Yes, definitely. Any of these here that we're seeing in the examples, this application I've logged in today, I've locked it down. But you'll see an example in just a minute where I can come in, and if I have the right permissions and I have the way I access the application, I can just simply turn on edit, come in, make a change to the visualization. And I'll actually show that to you in just a minute. I'm glad you asked about that. There's quite a few different ways that we can actually visualize the data, whether it's these gauges or we can bring in just a simple value. This is a measurement of what's the transaction time in of the values going across all of the log files. Or what we call, little spark lines. So there's different ways that we can visualize our data. And you're just seeing just a small sampling. And the one thing I love about Splunk is how quickly I can visualize my data. It doesn't take, I've worked with other solutions that might take me several hours to even a couple days building out the visualizations. And you can go beyond this because we can take advanced XML and come in and take it even further to fit it into other solutions. So hopefully that answered your questions, and I'll actually show you an example of how to change the visualization in just a second. Any other questions, Michelle, before I go over to this other example?
Not at this time, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to just show you just a little bit. I'm working on a POC around change management for another customer, and I'm bringing in not that customer's data today. I'm actually bringing in Calbro, but I'm on a Remedy environment, so I'm actually Splunking Remedy data for this customer. Now, you know, change management today, I'm just going to back up for a second. This could apply whether you have HP, CA, your own homegrown change management solution. You can Splunk that data. I'm just using Remedy as an example because that happens to be what I'm working with right now. But this applies to any IT operations team. Splunk is a very good fit to give you those data insights. So in this case, we're actually using an app from Splunk that's free. The Splunk ecosystem offers many free applications. I would say the large majority are free and I can download. Like if I need a Linux, Unix app, I can start monitoring my Linux and then also my Windows environments. Simply download the app, point to your files, and you now have that data splunked and available to search or start building into your applications. In this case, I brought it in via the Database Connect. So I'm going into the Remedy environment. I'm bringing in the change data. And I can look at, you know, what's going on for the different data, as well as the timing, the type, status, the customer. So a lot of very valuable. These key value pairs, Splunk loves it when this data comes in this way. Now, if the data doesn't come in a key value pair like this, we have the ability to go in and extract data from a log file. That's what we call, this is very structured data, whereas I might get log files from systems that aren't. They're very, you know, unstructured. Splunk is key on being able to get to the data insights and pull that out and extract that data and make it searchable. So we have the ability to do that. Now, what I've done actually is turn this into dashboards. I showed you a few minutes ago. I can, you know, top values over time, quickly dashboard on this. Just going to go and change this and turn this into maybe a pie chart. So over the last 60 minutes, or this is actually the 30 days, we're looking at what types of changes are coming through. I can mash this up. Were they successful? So what I've actually done, and this is just, you know, sandbox environment, I've put some of this data into just a quick dashboard. I did this just before the call here. So I've looked at what types of change requests do I have in the last 30 days? Where are they classified as far as their category? And then these are being requested via service request. What was their total open time? Now I have a lot of historical requests I pulled in that they go beyond, this goes beyond 30 days, this total time open to fulfill. Obviously I don't want these, but it allows me to look, you know, this is multiple change requests to fulfill the build of VM. So, you know, hopefully I'm seeing these very fast response times. So this is showing you how I can match it up. And then the other part of this I'm working on right now, and I'm just going to use a out-of-the-box application from Splunk called Splunk on Splunk, that shows how we can pull the change data from Splunk and put it with potentially configuration data. Now Splunk is maybe a very key application that I deploy. Splunk has allowed me to install an application pre-built from Splunk, but you can apply these same concepts to your own custom-built solutions, allowing us, in this case, I want to look at the configuration files. So this is the type of interface we could take and put in place around your configuration files, put your change data with it, and you have valuable insights to your team immediately at their fingertips. So here are configuration files from Splunk. I'm able to go ahead and look at these. Let's say I want to see what's gone on with the Remedy configuration files. So I'm able to pull in and look at this and see, you know, what's gone on. Here's the actual, what was touched in this configuration file. I can even compare multiple files. And all of this is available in the Splunk UI. It's just simply a matter of mashing up the data with the type of UI that I want to put around this. So this is just a couple of additional examples I've added today to just show you very quickly how I can bring in my change data from my environment, fully searchable, dashboarded, and then point to and Splunk my configuration files and make them searchable, whether from a search window or from a nice user interface where I can select from and view those configuration files. So with that, I'm going to go back to the slides to kind of wrap up here, and we'll get to the Q&A after just a couple more slides. But Michelle, are there any other questions from the folks on the call today?
Not at this time.
So as we get to the Q&A, I haven't lost everyone here. I think I've got the audio still. So keyboard is, there we go. Okay. So let's come back to Splunk for change management. Think about the changes, the challenges that your change management team is facing right now. And the way that you may have data gaps, where you have different point solutions, but you find a lot of data gaps, so it's around change detection or auditing, or put it on the front end, change planning around the success rate of that team to implement that change. Splunk is well positioned to either come alongside your current solutions and complement them, or as a couple of other customers, have mentioned to me that they want to go ahead and potentially retire these older point solutions that it's a lot of time to maintain. So Splunk is well positioned from an IT operations perspective to complement your current change management processes and solutions. And these are just a couple examples, as well as a dashboard that was built out to represent your change data. And don't forget your configuration data that's critical to the environment in the audience. So let me get to one use case, and then we're actually going to get to the Q&A. So Monash University is a Splunk customer. They're actually in Australia. The old way they used to deal with change management, and oftentimes they found a lot of unauthorized changes that were causing downtime. So they difficulty around change control. They did have a seem-to-be in provisioning tools, but they gave them very limited coverage. They had a centralized, I know what the CI is, and I have a change ticket over here, but what really changed the environment? So they couldn't truly audit. There's no auditing with the integration of that. So they put Splunk in place, and very quickly, in a fast return of time, in a couple of weeks, they're able to link their change to their system behavior. So they now have alerting that allows them to tell when an unauthorized change to occur around a configuration. They're indexing their system changes, their configuration. It reaches all the way into the depths of IT around the database audit logs. They're now able to go ahead and detect these changes in real time and report on them and validate them. So they selected Splunk because it's detecting virtually every change and telling them in real time, much more proactive in the way they've done it. This is one of about 4 different really good use cases that I have seen around change management. If you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to talk about that as a follow-up. So the last part I want to, before I get to the Q&A and just kind of summarize, is that Splunk is well positioned there. Think about your entire organization, both on the IT side as well as the operations and business side. There is a different view of your data that is going to be valuable to all of your teams. I know our focus has been change management today, but I want to open up the horizons and kind of point you to where potentially Splunk can grow. Usually it starts with a very key use case around IT operations and change management incident response time, but it is well positioned to provide those other insights as well. So hopefully we answered some of your questions today. I know there's some other questions that have come in, and we'll want to get to those in the Q&A. I think the key takeaway here is oftentimes what has occurred. Something's telling you, what it is that's going on. That this system is not performing well, and it's brought that flag up. But you don't know why, and that's where Splunk allows you to get those real-time data insights and historical to monitor for those changes and tell you why very quickly, so you can avoid those costly downtime and outages. So with that, I want to go ahead and open up for a QA as we look to wrap up here. I know everyone's taken some time out of their busy schedule. So Michelle, what questions do we have from the team? We either open up your phone line, or if you want to just post the chat, we can do that as well.
If folks can post their questions in the chat, that would be great. We do have a question, Paul, from Sid. His question is, we have a medium-sized business with a couple help desk technicians, but I keep hearing this word Splunk, and it sometimes feels that it's used only for the big enterprise customers, or can anybody really use Splunk and be successful?
Good question. I'm glad you asked that, Sid. Talking to a customer last week, they are a company of less than, I believe, he said 100 employees, very small company. And they're really facing the challenge around some security and change auditing. And Splunk is really, so their data that they will consume per day, that's how Splunk is licensed on the total volume, they can make Splunk fit their needs. So Splunk, it goes with the small organization all the way to the very large companies out there today that are using Splunk that are looking at terabytes of data. So it's well positioned across the spectrum there. Other questions?
Next question comes from Scott. I have a couple discovery type tools. How does Splunk work with them?
Oh, very good. Quite often we'll take a look at the data use case and we'll see at what gaps you currently have. You know, you might have a very large solution around HP OpenView and it's really good about certain data insights it's going to bring in, but there'll be gaps or it's focused around a certain silo of technology. So Splunk can come alongside and complement that and provide value, taking value or data from those point solutions, bringing it into Splunk, and then the teams now have that central searchable location with that data that they can get to or look at dashboards. The other use case that I've seen quite often is it's an older legacy system. They have it on life support. They're paying maintenance around it. It's costing them a lot to keep it up and alive and running, and it doesn't really solve the challenges they're having. What we're finding is customers are able to start retiring some of these other point solutions because Splunk is horizontal and allowing us to reach across and get those data insights, whether it's for incident investigation or monitoring, and alerting. So well positioned to either complement or potentially replace.
Next question, Paul, comes from Jose again. He had asked the question before about the who and the when. Is there also notification within Splunk when certain situations occur?
Good question. So I pointed to the alerting. I didn't open that up for sake of time, but alerting allows me to capture a search, and the search could be multiple data sources. So I could be looking across 3 tiers of the production application stack, and once it finds the matching search, I can alert, I can send an email, I can run a script, I can run another search to do another validation. So I can kind of have a threshold or a kind of a stair-stepping ability in Splunk saying, okay, make sure this is true. But it gives us all of these possibilities, whether it's just a simple email or run a script and go and create a ticket in my ticketing system to tell the team that there's a critical issue going on. So it's very flexible in how we can fit the alerting into your the use case that you have.
And the last question, Paul, today comes from Colleen. Who do I contact if I have questions after I do the initial Splunk install?
Oh, great. So Colleen, thanks for asking that question. I want to get to this right now. So let's say you haven't tried Splunk before. We met at some of the conferences we've been at lately, and you are attending our webinar for the first time learning about Splunk. What we recommend is to go ahead and download it. We have it on our website. You can start Splunking your data today, and it's very fast and easy to get up and going. But at the same time, we have what we call a quick start. Our solutions team loves working with customers that are just exploring Splunk. And by the way, Splunk to install and try is free. I mean, the first so many megabytes of data I can get in and start bringing the data and understanding insights. And some customers actually solve issues in their IT infrastructure from the free version. So we like to just work with you, identify some log files that you want to take a look at. We'll put it on your desktop. We'll walk you through the install, and we'll get you to a point that you're actually listening to your data and dashboarding it within the first hour of time that you have it on your environment. So with that, Colleen, if you want to send us an email and let us know, we'd be glad to work with you on that. And anyone else on the webinar today, please let us know. We're here. We love working with customers as they explore and learn from Splunk, or if you're an existing Splunk customer and you want to further explore change management in the way that Splunk can solve some of the challenges you have there, we'd be glad to work with you. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up right now.
Paul,
Michelle, question? Yes.
Yes, we do. We actually do have one more question. We have a question from John. It says, it's not change related, but I'm unfamiliar with Splunk. But how exactly is machine data at the 3 layers gathered from heterogeneous servers? Are there clients which need to be installed on any or worst of all servers which configuration data is desired?
Yeah, so the one other thing I love about Splunk is the ability to install what we call the universal forwarder. It's a lightweight forwarder. It's just a portion of the Splunk, core code, and it's installed there. You point to the directory or the log file. No parsing, no custom configuration connector has to be developed. If it is machine data, and if it's readable, human-based data, structured or unstructured, you simply point to that source and forward it off to the Splunk indexer. So Splunk is well positioned to be able to get to this data quickly and easily.
And that is all our questions, Paul.
All right. Well, thanks, folks, for taking time out of your busy schedule. If you, by chance, have missed the previous webinar, we actually are posting those to our ET Connect YouTube account. This one will actually be going up later on today. So if you get a colleague that you might find that is of interest to them, they want to see this, you want to share it, by all means, feel free. We'll be actually posting that on our website of news and events here probably tomorrow. So watch for that, as well as access to the slides that we've shared today. So thanks for joining today. Watch for another Splunk for IT Operations webinar in the future, and have a really good day. Thank you.